In the year 1633, Japan is closed to all foreigners. Mixed-race children are treated as demons, monsters, less than human. Over 20 years later, Mizu, a young samurai with blue eyes, enters a noodle shop. One of the other customers there is Hachiman the flesh trader, who threatens the shop owner's son Ringo at gunpoint for spilling soba on him. Mizu cuts off several of his fingers and demands to know where he got his gun. Having been told that it was from Heiji Shindo, the samurai sets off again into the winter cold. Ringo follows suit and begs to be made an apprentice, but is soundly rebuffed. In flashbacks, a young Mizu is chased to a cliff by a pack of boys, one of whom jeers, "Your whore mother killed herself because your father is a white devil." Suddenly a blue comet arrives, scaring off the children. Mizu watches as a blind old man struggles to lift the meteorite and helps him load it into his cart. The man turns out to be Master Eiji, a renowned swordsmith, and he takes Mizu on as his apprentice. While acting as Master Eiji's apprentice, Mizu begins observing the movements of the various swordsmen who come to get a blade from the famous swordsmith, and trains at night to incorporate their various styles into a unique blend that is all her own. Once in Kyoto, Ringo once again attempts to become Mizu's apprentice, but Mizu has no time for him and tries to get rid of him by paying for him to have an extended stay in a brothel, which will give Mizu enough time to attend to business and then leave the city without Ringo. Mizu also encounters and locks eyes with a noblewoman in a litter, Akemi of the Takunabu clan. Akemi meets with her father, Lord Daichi Takunabu, about her prospects for marriage. Lord Takunabu is eager to marry her off to one rich lord or another, but Akemi attempts to convince him to sanction an engagement to an undefeated swordsman from the famous Shindo dojo named Taijen. With a little time and flattery, Akemi manages to sway her father, partially because Taijen is a man who comes from a humble background much like Lord Takunabu. Afterwards, Akemi meets with Taijen to tell him the news, and it turns out the two have already been in a secret relationship for some time. At the Shindo dojo, Mizu asks politely but insistently to deliver a message to the master of the dojo. Once rebuffed enough times, Mizu cuts through the students with ease, using only a wooden sword, until Taijen, the best swordsman in the dojo, challenges the interloper to a duel. They recognize each other from childhood. Taijen was one of Mizu's bullies. He wins but declines to administer the killing blow, opting to mock Mizu instead for being mixed race. Enraged, Mizu takes off the wrist and ankle weights she always wear to strengthen her body, defeats Taijen, and slices off his topknot, dishonoring him. The master intervenes to stop Taijen from being killed and reveals that his brother Heiji Shindo is on Tanabe Island guarding the white man that Mizu has sworn to kill. The master then visits his brother and tells him of the seemingly unstoppable samurai. A mysterious figure orders for the Four Fangs to be sent after the samurai, which Heiji agrees to. After leaving Kyoto, Mizu finds and bathes in a waterfall, revealing that she is a woman. At that point, Ringo catches up to her again, and the episode ends with the two staring at each other. The Four Fangs, hired by Heiji Shindo to kill Mizu, interrogate Ringo's father at the noodle shop. On the road, Mizu again refuses to take on Ringo as an apprentice, until he covers for her at the checkpoint to Mahanaseki, a port town. There, she tries to hire a boat to the island where the white man is. However, nobody will take her today because it's a festival, so Ringo enjoys town life while Mizu trains at the cliffs. Back in Kyoto, Taijen has lost his status and betrothal to Akemi due to his defeat and his topknot being sliced off, so he tracks Mizu to Mahanaseki, intending to challenge her to a formal duel to regain his honor. Meanwhile, a pair of lords, the more prominent one being Lord Chiba, arrive to bring Akemi's father a new marriage proposal for Akemi, a proposal that would wed her to the shogun's younger son. Lord Takunabu is overjoyed by the proposal and leaps to make it happen, but Akemi is deeply unhappy about having to blacken her teeth and marry a man she's never met. Worse, the shogun's son has a dark reputation, which includes rumors of abusing his prior wife. Akemi decides to run away in secret, hoping to find Taijen, help him restore his honor by defeating Mizu, and then return with him and save their engagement once his reputation is salvaged. Her elderly retainer Seiki, who did much of the work of raising and teaching Akemi, sees through her plot and invites himself along. In flashbacks, Mizu and the sword father make a sword for a bookbinder who wants to avenge the death of his father, who was cut down by a drunk ronin. However, the sword shatters during its forging, due to an unexpected element. Angered, the bookbinder strikes Mizu. Sword Father catches his hand and can tell from the calluses on his hand, which come from holding a sword, that the bookbinder is actually a mercenary who just made up a sad story to get a sword. Laughing, the man announces himself as an assassin known as Bloodsoaked Chiaki, gloats about the fortunes he will make even with a broken sword from Master Eiji, and leaves with the blade. As part of the festivities, Ringo and the townspeople run into the water after a wooden baton, as whoever grabs it will have their wish granted. Ringo emerges victorious with it clenched between his teeth. His wish is to be great at something. Whether that comes true remains to be seen. The Four Fangs track Mizu to the cliff. She jumps down, forcing them to fight her on the cliff one-on-one, and lose their numerical advantage. She cuts them all down except for the last one, who turns out to be Bloodsoaked Chiaki from her childhood. She defeats him too, but is seriously wounded doing so, leaving her bleeding badly and struggling to stand as Taigen arrives to challenge her to a duel. Mizu accepts his challenge but collapses from blood loss and her other injuries before they can begin, leaving her completely at Taigen's mercy. The episode closes with a frustrated Taigen trying to decide whether or not to finish her off. The episode begins with a flashback to Mizu as a baby. Two men have been ordered to kill her, to the horror of a nearby woman, but one of them is reluctant and says that he can't harm a child. When the other man goes to kill baby Mizu, the first man intervenes, stabs his compatriot, then thrusts Mizu, now covered in the blood of her would-be killer, at the woman and tells her to take the child and leave. The episode then resumes where the prior one left off. Mizu has collapsed from her wounds and blood loss at Taigen's feet, who debates whether to finish her off but decides not to after a brief struggle with himself. Ringo arrives, and Taigen suggests bringing Mizu to a nearby shrine so her wounds can be tended to there. Mizu has a series of feverish flashbacks, mostly involving her childhood, fire, her mother, and repeated warnings that the bad men would find her if she ever showed her face to others. At Heiji Shindo's stronghold on Tanabe Island, the news about the deaths of the Four Fangs is not well received. In a fit of rage, Shindo's European partner kills the messenger and orders Shindo to take care of the matter, as he mentions being occupied with their plans to control the shogunate. At the shrine, Ringo makes medicine from various herbs and mushrooms to heal Mizu and sews up her wounds, while Taigen writes up a contract to fight Mizu in a duel that will have witnesses and be legal. An enormous hulk of a man named Okayama, who wields an equally enormous club, approaches the shrine, acting as a messenger from Heiji Shindo, and delivers an invitation from Shindo for a meeting and a talk. Despite Taigen loudly protesting that the invitation is a trap and Mizu being so badly injured that she can barely mount a horse, Mizu, Taigen, Ringo, and Okayama set off for the site where Shindo is waiting for them. Akemi and Seiki's journey is not going well. Brigands attack them on the road, driving off or killing their palanquin bearers and robbing Akemi of her money. She responds by asking a farmer passing by on his cart to take them to Mahanaseki and pays him with a golden hairpin. But while she sleeps in the back of his cart, he takes Akemi and Seiki even further than she wanted to go, leaving her even worse off than she was. Akemi briefly seems ready to give up, but learning that it was Seiki who brought her father the prospect of breaking the engagement to Taigen and marrying her to the shogun's son reignites her stubborn refusal to give up and go home. Instead, she goes into a nearby tavern, tricks a local flesh trader named Goro into believing that she is a courtesan looking for a new place of employment, and they set off together for Mahanaseki. Seiki is forced to watch her leave. When Mizu, Taigen, Ringo, and Okayama reach their destination, Taigen refuses to leave Mizu's side and accompanies her to meet Heiji Shindo. They pass through a very narrow ravine, and when they finally make it to the other side of the ravine, Heiji Shindo invites them to tea. Although there are a few pleasantries exchanged, the mood is very tense. Mizu and Taigen could attack Shindo at any moment, while he jokes about having hundreds of archers stationed out of sight on the cliffs above them, ready to begin shooting at a signal. Shindo also reveals the name of the white man he's working with for the first time, Abijah Fowler. Shindo first offers to buy off Mizu, and when she refuses, he offers to help her in her quest for revenge, revealing that he privately despises Fowler and wishes him dead. Shindo shows her a barrel of sake, one of 10 he has purchased while away from the castle, and offers to smuggle her into the castle inside the barrel, getting her past the defenses of the castle and giving her a much better chance at reaching and killing Fowler. Mizu notes that the sake smells strangely bad for men of wealth and tastes like Shindo and Fowler, which Shindo addresses by saying this particular barrel is cheap sake they serve to prostitutes who visit the castle. Shindo tries to force Mizu to accept and get in the barrel, as now he has revealed too much for her to refuse. She either has to accept or he signals the archers he joked about earlier to fire and kill Mizu and Taijen. All bets are off when Shindo grabs Mizu's arm, as she quickly draws her sword and cuts off his hand. For a few seconds it seems like Shindo was bluffing about the archers, and then a great volley of arrows starts flying from the cliffs around them. Heiji Shindo runs off while Mizu and Taijen take cover, then head for the ravine while the archers reload. They make it most of the way through the ravine, but when both Taijen and Mizu sustain minor wounds that will slow them down, it seems like certain death for them. Fortunately, Ringo rides into the ravine on one of the horses, while using the saddle from another one to protect himself from arrows. With Mizu and Taijen clinging to the sides of the horse, all three manage to make it away safely. The trio are jubilant and exhilarated to be alive afterward, congratulating and complimenting each other. Mizu reveals that she thinks she has a way into the castle, thanks to the prostitutes that Shindo mentioned. Taijen appreciates her cleverness, but says it's too bad they have to fight their duel tomorrow, so Mizu will never get to carry out her revenge on Fowler. Mizu promptly knocks him out by hitting him with the handle of the broken sword, then leaves it behind as a gift, along with a note offering to duel Taijen in the autumn, after she has finished carrying out her revenge. Unfortunately for Taijen, Okayama appears, captures him, and then brings him back to the castle on Tanabe Island, where Heiji Shindo and Fowler intend to torture Taijen into telling them everything he knows about Mizu so they can prepare themselves for her. The episode begins with a woman adding drops of a suspicious substance to a pot of sake, then serving it to a samurai. Then the audience sees that the samurai is Mizu, and the woman serving the drink is Akemi. At this point we jump back in time. Mizu has just arrived in a new town, and after witnessing a duel, she goes out, seeking the parlor that would be sending prostitutes to the remote castle of Heiji Shindo and Abijah Fowler. She stops at a house run by Madame Kaji, who is known for catering to peculiar tastes. When Mizu goes inside, she asks Madame Kaji's assistant to see Madame Kaji herself. The assistant replies that people schedule appointments with the madam months in advance. But after hours of Mizu sitting inside the brothel, showing no interest in anyone or anything else, Madame Kaji finally comes to speak with her. Madame Kaji gives Mizu a talk about the nature of desire and tries to interest Mizu in various things her parlor offers. And Mizu finds herself a bit disconcerted when Madame Kaji's questions about what Mizu really wants causes Mizu to think of the moment she locked eyes with Taijen while they were wrestling. When the two are alone in a private room, Mizu brings up Abijah Fowler. A disconcerted Madame Kaji quickly guesses that Mizu is out to kill Fowler, and begins to refuse to have anything to do with the matter. Mizu demonstrates her sword skills and offers a trade, with Madame Kaji telling Mizu how to get into Fowler's island castle, and in exchange Mizu will use her sword skills against whatever enemy or to do whatever deed Madame Kaji wants. Mizu also mentions her maiming of Heiji Shindo, which seems to help persuade Madame Kaji. Madame Kaji then tells Mizu about the local Yakuza boss, Boss Hamada, who rules the town with his gang the Thousand Claws, who are called this due to their penchant for using Wolverine claws as their preferred weapon, and whom Kaji and her brothel are forced to pay tribute to. Worse, Hamada has demanded more than money from Madame Kaji, having also taken a deaf-mute girl named Kinuyo that Madame Kaji had taken a motherly interest in and promised to protect. Mizu guesses that Kaji wants her to assassinate Boss Hamada, and is surprised when the madam says that she wants Mizu to put Kinuyo out of her misery. Kaji notes that she will be the main suspect if anything happens to Boss Hamada, and there will be a terrible reprisal from the Thousand Claws, but an accidental death arranged just right could bring the life of pain and terror. Kinuyo is living to a close without the Thousand Claws descending on Kaji's brothel and slaughtering everyone there. Madame Kaji promises to give Mizu the information she desires in return, asking only that Mizu make a special sign to Kinuyo, which will let Kinuyo know that Mizu is acting on Kaji's behalf and give Kinuyo calm and peace. Madame Kaji offers Mizu a private room to stay until later in the night, when Mizu will attempt to carry out her mission when fewer people are awake, then leaves the room, crying softly for Kinuyo. Just a few moments later Akemi enters, and as we saw at the start of the episode, pours some sake for Mizu, claiming it's from Madame Kaji. At this point we flash back to Akemi's own journey after leaving Seiki in the previous episode. She goes through town after town alongside Goro, And whenever he is distracted or away from her side for a second, Akemi asks everyone she can for information on Taijen. Each time they receive no information, and Akemi tells Goro that they can do better than whatever brothel they were looking at, and at her insistence the two move on to the next town. At some points along the way they have to dodge soldiers who serve Akemi's father, as he has finally caught onto a ruse Akemi used to cover her absence. Goro begins getting impatient, and he starts to complain about how much trouble Akemi is being for him despite his good treatment of her, including at one point grumbling to himself that normally he can just drug troublesome girls into compliance while toying with a small container. But because he thinks Akemi is his big payday, he puts up with this and keeps moving on. Eventually they arrive at the same town and witness the same duel Mizu did, and Akemi notices Mizu wearing Taijin's scarf. Akemi then follows Mizu to Madame Kaji's brothel, proclaims that this is the one, and covertly swipes Goro's knockout drug container. Madame Kaji almost immediately sees through Akemi's act of being an experienced courtesan, but also sees Akemi's legitimate desire to escape from home, and decides to give Akemi a chance in the brothel. Akemi uses her wits to trick one client into pleasuring himself, then grabs some sake, pours a few drops of Goro's knockout drug into it, and goes into Mizu's room to serve her, claiming that Kaji told her to do so and will beat her if she doesn't. Much like Madame Kaji, Mizu isn't fooled by Akemi. In fact, she remembers seeing Akemi in Kyoto, and quickly baits her into revealing herself by claiming that she killed Taijen. When a grief-stricken Akemi draws a dagger and attacks, Mizu subdues her, then reveals that Taijen is alive, ties Akemi up, and has Ringo watch her while Mizu leaves to go on her mission. Mizu manages to infiltrate the top floor of Hamada's gambling house, evading detection at every step. Kinuyo has just been visited by a doctor, and is in the company of a bodyguard trusted to be by her side when boss Hamada isn't around. Mizu disposes of the guard with a dart to the neck, then makes the sign Madame Kaji told her to make to Kinuyo. Kinuyo is reluctant to trust her, but finally approaches Mizu after Mizu says that she'll protect her. The women crouch together in the dark room while boss Hamada's guards patrol nearby, trying not to raise the alarm, and then Mizu abruptly breaks Kinuyo's neck. The other woman is likely dead before realizing Mizu turned on her. An emotionally distraught Mizu arranges the scene to look as though the bodyguard attacked Kinuyo in an attempt to rape her and she stabbed him in the neck with one of her hairpins, making it appear to be a mutual kill. Mizu slips out of the building and into a nearby alley, where she is still disturbed, shaking, and having trouble holding in her feelings. She realizes that a young boy has seen her and considers silencing him, but seems unable to work herself up to it, and so tells him instead to report a fight between two people to the night watchman. Mizu then heads back to the brothel, where Madame Kaji gives her information on how to infiltrate the castle, and allows Mizu to rest for a day before departing. Not long afterward, however, there's a scream from outside the building, and Mizu and company run outside to see boss Hamada, and his claws are assembled there, with Hamada holding Madame Kaji's doorman hostage. Hamada calls on the boy Mizu spared to identify the figure he saw in the alleyway, and the boy points at Mizu. Boss Hamada slits the throat of the doorman, then orders his men to kill everyone from Kaji's brothel and to burn it to the ground. The episode opens with a puppet stage performance, in what appears to be a variation of Bunraku puppet theater, before what seems to be a high-ranking and important audience. The narrator of the show says that no one man can defeat an army, but a creature can, and proposes to tell the audience how such a creature can come to be. The narrator then begins a story where in ancient times the master of a Ronin was slaughtered by a rival clan whose crest was the phoenix, and how it caused a storm to rise in his soul, as he swore vengeance. As the narrator says this, we get quick flash cuts between the Ronin in the show and Mizu, who is facing down the 1,000 claws. As she looks at the claws and Madame Kaji's murdered assistant, a hateful glare comes to Mizu's face. Mizu cuts down the first few members of the claws, causing some of the others to give each other nervous looks. That buys Mizu and the others time to retreat into the brothel and barricade the formidable door. Madame Kaji, Akemi, and the other girls retreat to a basement. Mizu sends Ringo to look after them and gives him a knife to use to defend himself and protect them. The girls shut themselves inside a room, with Ringo standing outside as a last line of defense. After a few moments, Akemi joins him, holding a tiny dagger, and declares the claws will have to get through them both. Upstairs, Mizu thinks about her childhood, remembering some tender moments with her mother, her mother's increasingly harsh admonishments against being seen, and forcefully shaving Mizu's head and telling her that she must always appear to be a boy, since the bad men are looking for a blue-eyed girl. She then remembers her home burning down, the apparent death of her mother in the fire, and swearing to get revenge by killing the white men. Her reverie is broken when the claws finally manage to break down the door and enter the room. With most of the interior in darkness, they go to one of the few places with any light, and Mizu promptly ambushes them from the darkness, easily cutting them down without them even seeing her. After some time passes, a second small group comes inside, and Mizu manages to kill several more with the same tactic. But the leader of this bunch manages to fight back effectively, parrying her blade, grabbing a hold of Mizu, pinning her against the wall, and then stabbing her in the side with his claws. The narrator from the puppet show tells of the Ronins vow to kill everyone who wears the phoenix crest and destroy their entire clan forever, but notes that the Ronin would find the demon's path of revenge to be a difficult one. Mizu's flashbacks show her own difficulties in her early attempts to try to find the white men, as she is stabbed in the side by a group of opium dealers she tried to question. Badly wounded, Mizu staggered away from their hideout, weakly searching for help. Meanwhile, in the performance, the Ronin's violent quest for revenge has early success, but takes a toll on both the Ronin's health and mind. The Ronin becomes sick, and it seems likely he will die of disease without fulfilling his vow. In the present, Mizu breaks free of the claws, then in between fighting them off, she takes off the weights on her arms and legs, connecting them to each other, and her sword to turn it into a makeshift naginata. The claws, who were already at a disadvantage thanks to the longer reach of Mizu's sword, have absolutely no chance to touch her now thanks to the added reach of her blade. She kills the remaining claws until they're down to a few survivors who flee in terror. She then grabs Boss Hamada and brings him to Madame Kaji so Kaji and her girls can get their own revenge on him. An exhausted Mizu can barely keep from collapsing when the sound of approaching horses can be heard. It turns out that the horsemen are samurai in service to Lord Daichi, Akemi's father, who have come to find Akemi bring her home. Akemi tries to defy them, asking Mizu to fight on her behalf, but Mizu refuses and allows the samurai to take Akemi. Ringo is aghast at Mizu for not helping Akemi and tells Mizu off, complete with taking off the bell Mizu tied around him when he became her apprentice. Mizu, for her part, simply begins to slowly limp away, moving on to the next stage of her attempt to reach Fowler. At the puppet performance, the narrator concludes the show, and it is revealed that the performance was done for the shogun and his guests. The shogun then asks Akemi what she thinks of the entertainment in Edo. Akemi replies that there is one thing in the show that she believes was inaccurate. She says she met an Onryo once, and searched the creature's eyes for any sign of love, mercy, or goodness and found none. As Akemi speaks, we get a close-up of her face, showing her teeth have been blackened, indicating that her engagement to the shogun's younger son has gone forward. The episode begins with Mizu staring at Fowler's castle on Tanabe Island, with a narrow strip of the sea separating the coastline she's standing on and the island. She takes a moment to pray for strength and a clear mind, but is briefly disturbed by sad and traumatic memories from both her recent and more distant past, showing the effect of those events and how they're weighing on her. Mizu goes to find the secret tunnel that Madame Kaji told her about, which runs under the sea and will bring her beneath the castle. She's disturbed that the tunnel contains numerous human skeletons, and strangely, many of them could only be young children, even infants sometimes being held by the skeletons of adult women, presumably their mothers. At the end of the tunnel is a formidable wooden door, and when Mizu goes to pick the locks it springs a trap that floods the tunnel. Mizu manages to finish picking the locks and swim through before she drowns, emerging in a storeroom next to a courtyard. Despite Mizu's attempt to sneak past the guards, the alarm is almost immediately raised, alerting the rest of the castle to her presence. Fowler, Heiji Shindo, and Lord Chiba are in a room on the top floor, conspiring about their efforts to assassinate the shogun and seize control of Japan in the spring. Fowler gladly shows off one of the rifles he intends to arm their troops with, and Lord Chiba says that the men are trained and ready. This doesn't mean they agree on everything, however, as for example Lord Chiba balks at the thousands of deaths that Fowler predicts will be necessary, wondering if there isn't a way to accomplish their goals with fewer deaths. At that point a servant comes in to inform them about the intruder, and Shindo immediately knows that it's Mizu. He goes over to an elaborate device that allows him to view various parts of the castle to watch Mizu's progress. First, Mizu sprints through a hallway where the walls are closing in and blades spring out of all sides of the corridor, making it through despite taking a wound in the foot. Next, she manages to cross a narrow outdoor path that has several pit traps and fights a group of guards at the end. After passing through an area of the castle's kitchen, where the servants try to go about their business without doing anything to draw her ire, she comes to a strange area with an indoor Zen garden. A monkey comes out from behind some scenery and holds out a flower to Mizu, then blows pollen from the flower into her face, which quickly sends her into a hallucinogenic state. Confused by her visions, Mizu sees a group of many more monkeys attacking her, but she eventually manages to progress. Still going in and out of lucidity, Mizu reaches an area with prisoners in a dungeon. Okayama, Heiji Shindo's giant enforcer with a club, sets the prisoners free and then destroys the only source of light in the room before leaving. Mizu has a vision of the prisoners as feral demonic beings attacking her in the darkness and kills them. She's about to leave until her hallucinations bring her to a cell where the prisoner didn't attack, and it turns out to be Taijen, who is very badly injured, laying on the floor and unconscious. Mizu manages to rouse him and takes him with her, somewhat to his chagrin when he realizes they're going up instead of down and fleeing the castle. Next, Mizu squares off with Okayama, which is a difficult fight, especially with the hallucinatory effects still bothering her. Eventually she overcomes him, but has to set off an explosive to do so, temporarily knocking her out. When she comes to, her head has cleared somewhat, but the room in the tower is severely damaged by the explosion, and Taijen is about to fall through a hole in the wall and to the ground below. Mizu grabs him, then begins climbing the castle on the outside, letting her bypass at least one and perhaps more floors and defenses. Finally, she bursts through the window of the room Fowler, Shindo, and Lord Chiba are in, demanding to know where Fowler is, and catches sight of the map Fowler has been using to plan his assault on the shogun at his castle in Edo. Lord Chiba briefly distracts Mizu by attacking her, but she easily defeats him and knocks out the man. Then she turns to see Fowler, who has grabbed the rifle he was showing off to his co-conspirators earlier, loaded it, and has it aimed at Mizu. He fires, breaking her sword and wounding Mizu in the shoulder. Mizu tries to fight anyway, but every time she tries to strike Fowler, he beats her with the rifle, his fists, or both. He mocks Mizu for trying to kill him, noting that as far as he knows he's accounted for all his bastards, referring to the skeletons Mizu saw in the tunnel, and lets Mizu get a good look at his green eyes. Fowler notices Mizu's tattoo and quickly deduces the purpose of it, and that she was responsible for killing Violet, the white man Mizu successfully assassinated before the start of the show. Fowler says for Violet, and then resumes beating her. Taijen manages to gather some strength, grabs a sword out of Heiji Shindo's hand, and attacks Fowler, but is so weak and discombobulated that the attack doesn't even hurt Fowler, who begins pummeling the already half-dead Taijen. Realizing that she has no chance of defeating Fowler, and that Taijen is about to be beaten to death, Mizu manages to grab Taijen and makes a running leap out of the same window they came through. Together the two go past the cliff edge the window overlooked, and plunge into the icy waters below. Mizu attempts to grab Taijen, swim up to the water's surface, and climb onto the ice to get away, but is unable to pull them onto the ice. They start to sink into the water, but just before she can black out she hears a bell ringing, and sees a figure that might be Ringo standing on the ice. The figure reaches towards her, but her vision goes black at that moment. The episode begins with Ringo knocking on the door of a hut, having brought Mizu and Taijen there in the back of a cart. He is pleading with the owner to open up and help him tend to Mizu and Taijen, hoping they can still be saved. At that point Mizu's sword falls off the cart and makes its distinctive clanging sound, which causes Master Eiji to immediately open the door. Master Eiji has Ringo bring Mizu and Taijen inside so they can be cared for. Sometime later, as winter is passing into spring, Fowler and Heiji Shindo leave the castle at Tanabe Island, with Fowler hoping it's the last time he'll ever see the place. The two are making a springtime trip to Edo for the Sano Matsuri, a major Shinto festival, during which they will launch their coup. Shindo is worried because the guns haven't arrived yet, and their plans and coup will never succeed without them. Fowler tells him not to worry, and the two begin a trip to Edo filled with debauchery and pleasures of the flesh. During a night at Madame Kaji's brothel while being pleasured by the girls, Fowler speaks of details of the plan and tells Shindo that the guns will be smuggled in by boat in 2 days. Shindo immediately writes a letter to Lord Chiba, urging him to intercept the guns at all costs, as Shindo believes there can be no sharing power with Fowler and Fowler will be a disaster for Japan. Lord Chiba and his men search all the boats coming into the country, but can find no sign of the guns that Fowler promised, only random Western goods, leading him to wonder if Fowler is deceiving them and cannot actually supply the guns he claimed that he could. Back at Master Eiji's house, Mizu finally comes to, but finds that Ringo is still angry with her. Taigen also wakes up after Mizu and thanks her for saving his life. Master Eiji says he cannot mend Mizu's broken sword and will not make or give her a new sword, because of how out of control the flame of vengeance is within her. So Mizu decides that she must remake her blade herself. Her attempts don't go well, however, as the steel stubbornly stays in its shape and won't melt so she can reforge it. The next day she speaks with Taigen, and Taigen tries to snap her out of her morose attitude and encourage her that she can defeat Fowler with whatever weapon she wants. The two have a friendly wrestling session, but the mood changes when Mizu tells Taigen about Akemi's engagement to the shogun's son Takayoshi, how Mizu allowed Akemi to be taken away by her father's samurai, and Fowler's plot against the shogun. Taigen is incredulous that Mizu has known all this and not told him about any of it, and furthermore, hasn't told anyone else about the plot against the shogun or taken action against it. He leaves to warn the shogun of the danger, and angrily tells Mizu he'll come looking for her for a duel afterward. Later that day the shogun, his family, Akemi, and the lords all eat together and celebrate the marriage of Akemi and Takayoshi. Lady Ito, the shogun's wife, says that Akemi's meal has been made specifically for her. It turns out to be a series of dishes meant to disgust or humiliate her, with the last dish being especially cruel: the bird that Akemi had admired and Takayoshi shot. Akemi forces herself to remain impassive and not betray any weakness or give an excuse for the shogun and company to take offense, but she fumes inwardly. When she gets a present of 2 more birds that night, and her ladies-in-waiting titter about how perhaps they will be breakfast and lunch, a furious Akemi storms into Takayoshi's quarters, slaps him, and demands an explanation for his behavior. To her shock, Takayoshi has difficulty speaking, but eventually manages to stutter out that the birds were meant as an apology for the way that his mother is treating Akemi. Akemi quickly realizes from Takayoshi's sad and gentle words and expressions that his fearsome reputation and silence is a cover to hide his stutter, and furthermore, that it's his mother Lady Ito who is behind Akemi's misery. Akemi immediately accepts his stuttering, and the two begin to bond, and eventually to make love. Fowler brings Heiji Shindo to a place where he can demonstrate their guns, much to Shindo's confusion since as far as he knows the guns haven't arrived. Fowler reveals that they have disguised as parts of other Western goods, and he assembles one from various bits and pieces of innocent items that were brought into the country. After demonstrating the superior range of the guns against a bow, Fowler has Lord Chiba executed for having tried to intercept the guns, saying Shindo will have to take Chiba's place during the coup. Shindo has little choice but to accept as he and Fowler overlook the small army recruited to take Edo Castle and destroy the shogun. Akemi rises early and dismisses her ladies-in-waiting and attendants from her service, realizing they are spies and catspaws for Lady Ito, then summons Madame Kaji and her girls. Akemi offers to buy out all their contracts with the brothel, then makes clear that while everyone is free to go, they also have an open offer to work for her there in the palace, as she desperately needs people she can trust around her, especially worldly people. Madame Kaji and the girls are glad to accept, and Ayase in particular is overwhelmed by Akemi's generosity, considering she was less than kind to Akemi in the brothel. Ayase tells Akemi about Fowler's plot to overthrow the shogunate, and Akemi goes to her father, bringing Ayase with her to tell the story. Lord Daichi listens, thanks Ayase, and then throws her over the same railing where Akemi was considering suicide earlier. He then reveals that he is part of the plot with Fowler and Shindo, and has his soldiers put Akemi in a cell where she will be safe and out of the way while the coup happens. Mizu and Ringo stand on the outskirts of Edo, looking over the city from the top of a hill, paying special attention to the shogun's massive palace at the center of the city. They make plans for how to get Akemi out of the city, as Mizu has promised Ringo that she will save Akemi in addition to killing Fowler. Mizu instructs him to wait by the sewer, where Mizu will send Akemi if Mizu can get her out of the palace, and then Ringo can take her out of the city. Ringo is worried about what will happen if Fowler kills the shogun, but Mizu is indifferent to his fate. Mizu says that she will meet Ringo on the hill when everything is done, unless she fails or dies. She tries to give him instructions in case she doesn't come back, but Ringo doesn't want to hear it. Mizu puts on her glasses and prepares to infiltrate the castle. Mizu manages to enter the castle and meets Madame Kaji, who is now more or less acting as Akemi's majordomo. Kaji initially attempts to turn Mizu away when Mizu asks about Akemi, but is unnerved when Mizu mentions Fowler's plot. Thinking about how Ayase heard Fowler talking about an attack, and realizing that she hasn't seen either Akemi or Ayase ever since they left to inform Akemi's father, Lord Daichi. Mizu tells Kaji to take her girls and get as far away as they can. Deep in the castle, Lord Daichi explains to Akemi how he plans for her to be the last member of the Ito clan left after the coup, at which point she will throw her support behind him, becoming the new shogun. He also mentions how Fowler expects him to be a puppet, but he plans to turn on Fowler after being installed. Akemi states that she won't cooperate, and the talk is interrupted by the sounds of fighting, as Seiki kills the guards around the room and comes to help Akemi escape. They lock Lord Daichi in Akemi's cell and leave, but are soon cornered by several more of Lord Daichi's samurai, who refuse to stand down when Seiki tries to pull rank with them. Things aren't looking good until Mizu ambushes the samurai from behind, and she and Seiki quickly manage to defeat the small group. Meanwhile, at the location where Ringo is supposed to wait for Akemi, Ringo encounters Taigen, who is intent on warning the shogun. With the guards unwilling to simply let Taigen through, he needs help to reach the shogun and recruits Ringo. Together they make a mad dash to try to reach the shogun, and although they are captured by the guards, they manage to get the shogun's attention and Taigen tells him of the plot. Lookouts go to the tower to search for signs of the insurgents, and spot Fowler's army marching through the streets of Edo. The alarm is raised and frantic attempts to defend the palace are made. Mizu parts ways with Akemi and Seiki so they can escape, while Taigen and Ringo take shelter with the shogun, his family, some of the lords, and a small group of guards who will form a desperate last defense. Fowler's army crushes the forces protecting the castle at every step along the way, taking only a few casualties as they make their way deeper into the sprawling compound. The defenders manage to secure a final gate outside the keep and shut it before Fowler's forces arrive, but Heiji Shindo backstabs the captain defending it and the other men at the gate, using hidden pistols to kill them before opening the gate for Fowler. Inside the safe room in the keep, the shogun, Taigen, and company can only listen helplessly as the sounds of gunfire gets closer and closer, before finally the door opens and Fowler, Heiji Shindo, and a small group of their soldiers enter the room. The shogun challenges Fowler to fight, but Fowler casually refuses and then shoots him, while Shindo demands the rest of the lords fall in line behind the coup. Fowler goes to move on to executing the shogun's sons, but at that point Mizu bursts into the room and thwarts Fowler. In the confusion, Mizu, Taigen, and presumably others counterattack, and Fowler's men are stymied trying to fight in close quarters with their rifles, especially since quite a few have already fired their weapons and it takes time to reload their guns. As his men are cut down, Fowler runs for it, and Taigen urges Mizu to go after him while telling the shogun's family, the lords, and Ringo to flee. The shogun's family and the lords leave through an escape passage. Surveying the carnage, Taigen catches Heiji Shindo playing dead among the corpses, and kills his former captor and torturer as Shindo begs for his life and attempts to bribe Taigen. Taigen then follows after Mizu to help her against Fowler. The two catch up to Fowler, but he manages to wound Taigen before fleeing again. Mizu tells Taigen this isn't his fight, and to find Akemi instead. She continues chasing Fowler, and during a fight both are wounded, and Mizu flings a candle into the doorway to block Fowler's escape, causing the room and the rest of the keep to quickly become engulfed in flames. Fowler once again flees Mizu when he gets a chance, then ambushes her when she follows him, delivering a nasty, rage-fueled beating to her. In the middle of doing so, he abruptly realizes that Mizu is a woman and seems to recognize her from before their encounters as adults, saying, "So you're the one." A newly enraged Mizu recovers enough to give Fowler a beating, then puts a dagger to his throat, demanding to know where the other two white men are. Fowler refuses to cooperate beyond saying the names of the other two men, Skeffington and Routley, saying Mizu won't find them without him, then says what might be the biggest wham line in the series. When Mizu points out she found Violet and Fowler by herself, Fowler replies they were practically out in the open compared to Skeffington and Routley, then implies they aren't even in Japan at all, but rather in London. Mizu thinks over his words as the keep burns down around them. Outside, Fowler's men have been unsure what to do without orders as they see the keep catch on fire. But with the flames spreading throughout the grounds, they finally start to break and run to escape. Meanwhile, the shogun's family are escaping in a tunnel under the castle. At a gate, Lady Ito instructs her older son, credited as Kazuyoshi in subtitles and on IMDb, to lock and bar the passageway behind them. When he protests that the lords are right behind them, she responds that they witnessed his father's dishonor, shamefully murdered by a white man he allowed into Japan against his own laws. Presumably, this could cause a scandal among lords that might bring down their claim to the title of shogun. He complies reluctantly, leaving the lords sealed in the burning keep to die. Taigen finds Akemi and mourns Seiki by her side, then offers her a chance to leave the court and live together. When she seems reluctant, he elaborates that he doesn't need or want riches or titles or to be great, just to be happy with her. Akemi makes a final decision and truly commits herself to it for the first time. Sometime later, Akemi finds Takayoshi, his brother, and Lady Ito. After Takayoshi's initial joy that Akemi managed to escape, they begin making plans for the future. Lady Ito declares that they will isolate Japan completely from the West, not even allowing the tiny trickle of trade and relations that her husband did. Takayoshi is sad about the enormous damage done to the city of Edo, but Lady Ito coolly replies that cities can be rebuilt. It's also mentioned that Akemi's father, Lord Daichi, survived the fire, to which Akemi says that her father only needs some time and private care under her attention to recover. Ringo stands on the hill overlooking the city, surveying the carnage and damage to the city while waiting for Mizu to arrive. But despite waiting, she doesn't come as planned. Eventually, he returns to Master Eiji's house, telling the Swordfather how Mizu never showed up. Master Eiji is thoughtful, finally saying that they can work while they wait, implicitly taking on Ringo as an apprentice. Finally, we see Fowler below decks on a ship, apparently in a cage or some other form of restraint. Mizu stands on the deck, looking out into the sea as they sail. Ahead of them are dark clouds and a storm,